Alright, welcome everybody. Alright. Thank you all for coming on today. We have our speaker, Tamsyn, who's going to talk to us today about bats. She's from the Fly-by-Night Bat Clinic, which, I'll read a little blurb, is a DEECA registered wildlife shelter for the rescue, rehabilitation and release of grey-headed flying foxes. Tam's been rescuing wildlife since 2007, not just bats.
No, I was doing big scrub pythons up in Queensland.
Oh, big scrub pythons.
Yeah.
So she's gone from pythons to bats?
Yeah. The ones that eat them.
Okay, oh, right.
Yeah.
And rehabilitating the foxes since 2012, which has led her to a bit of expertise in this area. So today she'll be talking about the many challenges and obstacles that the flying foxes face in their survival and the healthy keeping them that way. All right, thank you, Tamsyn.
No worries. Well, thank you all for coming. Good, appreciate you asking us, me to come and speak. I'll go to the first slide. So, my name's Tamsyn Hogarth. I'm a DEECA registered wildlife shelter, so I am licensed by the Department of Environment to rehabilitate wildlife. As was mentioned, I've been rescuing and rehabilitating grey-headed flying foxes for over 12 years. I'm trained and vaccinated to rescue care for and rehabilitate bats. Now, vaccinated has become convoluted nowadays, but it's for rabies, that particular vaccination. So the grey-headed flying fox is a mega bat. It's native and endemic. You most likely all know what endemic is, but it's only found in Australia. It's a keystone species and is vital to the health and environment of our ecosystem. They're a mammal. They have their live young, which then produce milk and are furred. Flying foxes are nocturnal. They sleep in their camp during the day and fly out to feed at night. Flying foxes don't use sonar like some bats, which the microbats, which you most likely get them as well here. They solely rely on eyesight, smell, to be able to see their food and smell. They are our only long-distance nocturnal pollinator of our tall tree forests. So we like to say that there are nighttime bees. I believe there's an expert bee person here. So we try to tell people that really understand bees that it's the same thing but at night. While flying in search of food, flying foxes can drop around 60,000 seeds along the way. Flying foxes are vegetarian, so they solely have, traditionally they only really go for native nectar, pollen, native flowers and fruit. So when we say fruit or fruit bats, the flying foxes are a fruit bat, it's native fruit. So your lily pillies, your Moreton Bay figs, which they love in the city here. They can travel up to 70 k's from their camp in a single night. That's back and forth. So Yarra Bend is roughly, you can get them about 35 k's radius of each colony. So when people say which area do we help, it's quite hard because it can be anywhere, because it's not just a single area where we get rescues. It can be a pretty broad area. A little bit of the depressing side. Grey-headed flying foxes are listed as vulnerable to extinction. They're now on the red list for that. So the main reason being habitat destruction is pushing them south. We're getting more and more sort of staying in Victoria, which we've discussed with a few people today. They've declined by 95% in the last century, so they could be extinct by 2050, which is quite depressing. Their range is, traditionally it was just the east coast, they would always come down here for pollination, but they travel back up. Now they're staying, so Adelaide is staying. We had a get to, but we had a flying fox that was down in Tasmania, which some of you heard about, which is unusual, but we also had one as far as the border of Western Australia, so they're getting pushed further out, which is concerning. So I know that's not a flying fox, but it's the same sort of anatomy. The flying foxes, we like to show people when we're rescuing them how they're very similar to the body structure of us. So when you pull out a wing, it's not like a bird, it's a giant hand they're flying with. So what they're flying with is just big fingers. So when they get injuries, they can lose certain tips and joints in areas when we rehab them, because they're just fingers, so you can imagine just getting little amputations. And the claw that everyone calls is a thumb. The other thing with great-headed flying foxes is people assume that that every colony is a different group. They're actually all one structured colony. So it's, I should really read what I've written. The national population of the great-headed flying fox is structured into colonies, however no separate or distinct populations due to the constant movement between camps throughout the species range. This indicates a single interbreeding population. So often Bendigo, they'll go, these are our bats, they're problem, we want to move them on. The problem with that is we can't just, if we take out those ones, they're constantly moving, so they're not the same bats every night that's there. With a lot of publicity goes into obviously koalas, which what people don't understand is the flying foxes have a purpose in that they have to regenerate the tree. So there's this lingo is used a lot, no tree, no me, but if there's no flying foxes, there's no tree. So it's sort of like, we like to bring that up as it all connects. There's a lot of misconceptions around bats and diseases. There's really only the one virus, which is called Australian bat virus, which can be present in great-headed flying foxes. As I've been doing it for so long, and I obviously get the sick ones, I have come across about 6 with Australian bat virus. That's the reason I'm vaccinated for rabies. It's very low risk. Most of them, unfortunately, they stop flying and they pass away in colonies due to food restrictions, can't fly anymore. It goes to their head and it kind of stops them from flying. So they basically succumb to lack of water and food. So there's less than 1% of the entire population may carry ABLV. Of that 1%, less than 3% actively have the disease. Those that actively have the disease can shed the virus in saliva. So a lot of misconception is if I walk through a colony or the bat flies over me, it poos on me, it wheezes on me, I'm going to acid, I'm going to die. That kind of misconceptions around how the virus is spread. You literally have to get a pretty decent bite, and it needs to go in and do a nice, which has happened a few times with me, but that's comes with the territory. But yeah, they essentially you need to get a pretty decent bite, and there's always medical treatment for that. So you're not going to die. You just go to the hospital and get vaccinations. So for myself, I would just get a booster of rabies vaccination. So when people are worried about diseases, the whole thing is there's no risk if you're not touching it. So we say no touch, no risk, no bite, no scratch, no worry. So it's hard for people to see a distressed animal and not want to help it. So most of the time there's someone that's trying to help that gets bitten, although there's a lot of people that will have them in their fruit tree nets that will try and get them out, and that's what a lot of the health department get calls about after the fact, that they've been released and then they have to go through the process of getting vaccinations. Now these are all the threats that we have, unfortunately, for our flying foxes. So the main one we see in Victoria is the backyard fruit tree netting. So it's now banned in Victoria, but unfortunately there hasn't been a lot of engagement with the communities around that being banned. So we're still getting a lot in netting. Most recently up until June, which was extremely strange for during the year, and that was due to persimmon and European fig. They were really late this year. It was like 3 months late. So we were getting a lot of the juveniles then. It was unfortunate. Barbed wire fencing. It's really hard. Like you would see it around the city areas. It's normally around concrete jungles. We don't see it as much in out. I'm sure that happens, but it's not as frequently. I've got a friend. It's not as frequent with the farms, but up north they do have it quite frequently in the farms at the lower height. We get them all at the sort of really 6 feet, 3 lines, really horrible stuff. Collisions, so hit by car, wind, gusts, overhead power lines, domestic animal attack, extreme weather events, habitat destruction, humans, shooting and cruelty. Now I didn't pick anything too graphic, but you can get the idea. So a grey-headed flying fox is caught in that type of kind of net. It's quite, the membrane is quite soft, it's full of veins, so that what's happening is that you're just constricting blood flow to areas of the wing. So a lot of people think, oh, you know, what's the problem, just let it go, you know, there's no issue. We have to keep them for over a month to see how it dies back, and often it's not a good case. A lot of them have their fingers broken as well. There's a little video here.
Goodness, sweetheart. Look at you. Look
This is
at
in
this.
town. We don't know what the person's plan was for keeping the fruit, because look at the size of the holes. He was in care over 3 months with me. He was released. He lost a toe and small amounts from his wing, but he was pretty significantly damaged. Just some more examples of fruit tree netting. When the ban came into place, a lot of the big businesses like Bunnings and that, they got on board straight away, Mitre 10, and unfortunately we found a lot of the sort of $2 shops were importing large amounts of that green netting, and it's like, and the black, which is, this actually isn't as bad, it's almost like fishing line, so it's really rough. I haven't seen that one. It's just really nasty stuff. You're just like, why would you put this up? And it's always, it's not, we generally don't see it in orchards. It's normally just someone that's sort of gone, I'm going to throw this over really poorly. There's holes everywhere, like you can see that green one on that side. There was nothing that was really stopping it. That girl with the green up here, unfortunately in Box Hill, we had someone that just kept trapping them and then throwing them out on the road alive, like on the nature strip, with the netting still entangled. She had to be euthanized because it cut off the blood supply to that wrist. And yeah, we never found that person, but she actually had a young on board that had passed away. Barbed wire fencing, there's a few farm ones there, but majority are sort of this, to get to ones like this. They're normally pretty horrific injuries. We had one in razor wire the other week, which was pretty nasty. The barbed wire, it just, they flying through the air, la 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 la, and they just don't see it, and they just get pulled back, and some of them do have fractured shoulders, but there's a lot of, like, around train stations, they put a lot of gums around the train stations, but then they put barbed wire. So there's a lot of places that have barbed wire, but then they're lined with gums, so you're like, good job on the native gums, bad job on the barbed wire, because we get so many of these guys that they come off the gum tree and they kind of have to go down to go up again, and they just whack the barbed wire. So they often bite the bulbs, and that's what breaks their pellet, and that's quite horrific. Overhead power lines, you no doubt would have seen them, unfortunately. We had a good success story, sort of, the park in Parkville. On Park Road, there was over 30 flying fox. They're all deceased on that power line. We had over 30 in a week, and they were coming for the ginkgo plants in that street. It was really unusual because they've never done that before, but obviously it was a food situation. We were able to get the power companies to get on board. We couldn't get the council, unfortunately, I think we're still in new talks, to remove the female plant. I think they're the ones that fruit, to at least bring them right down or remove them entirely, which sounds dramatic. They said they've been there for over 20 years and they're part of the landscape, which I get, but when we're seeing 10 to 20 flying foxes a week killed, it's pretty horrific. Our power companies were able to insulate those wires earlier this year, so hopefully in future years we won't have, there's multiple trees, but hopefully we won't have issues. Most great-headed flying foxes that pass away on power lines, they often have, if they're a female, they can often have a live young on board and they survive the electrocution. So if you ever see one deceased, that one's obviously a male, you can see his male bits, but often you can see a female with a baby, and I'll show you. It can be hard, but so I got called to this one on the left, and she'd been there already for a day, and because their wings open, you should be able to see, because they hold on to nipples under here. So I'll just play this video. We'll zoom in a little bit. It's hard to tell. There's two little baby wings hanging down in the bottom of their body. It's a very young one. So it wasn't doing much movement. Often, once they're sort of 2 or 3 weeks old, they'll start vocalising and moving back and forth, and we get calls going, you send us a photo, and they're like, it's clearly dead, but it's making noise. And you're like, well, it's obviously the baby that's making noise. So in the picture on the right here, it's a bit hard to see. You can see its little head here, and wrist, and its little foot over here. So it can be quite camouflaged, but that baby will just succumb to the elements unless we can get it down. So the power company aren't always super quick, but we normally wait for power companies to come down. They used a pole to get her down, and then that's her on the other side.
Will that baby survive?
Yes. Probably 90% of them survive. They just have to be rehabilitated. They're obviously orphaned, so we really, we get some cases where the electricity's run through like the ear or the thumb, but it's as long as it doesn't go through the organs. But most of the time they survive, which just blows the power company people's mind. They don't believe that that's possible. Oops. Did I go too far? Yes. Some of the other things we get called for, that's a collision. She was hit by a car, she's actually got a baby on her. You just see a foot sort of up near her neck. Fishing line, we get a lot of them in Yarra-Bend. Another one that was a collision. This is the fish hook. That little one was released, so it was okay. The mouths healed really well, but obviously hanging by your mouth isn't pleasant. But we get a lot like that. They just, when they dip, so when they're doing their classic dipping for water and they lick, I just get the fishing line. Antennas are a thing. It's not as big a thing, but it happens. His leg membrane on both sides was caught, so he would have just been flying through the air and not seen it. But he must have been going pretty fast. But when Nathan got him down, those metal things are really sharp. It's like little razors. So I can see how it would have, he's in care still. Heat and extreme weather events. So In Sale we had, unfortunately, a tree that came down. It was just one of those unfortunate weird weather events. And it was a maternity tree, and it was just full of mums and pups. We got a lot that passed away, but we were able to bring a lot into care. That one's after the heat event in 2019, also 2019. It was sort of, the temperatures were unusual for December, and mums don't normally, when we have the hot days, it's normally January, February, so the babies are off their mums. But for some reason this year, yeah, we had, which was 2019, I think it was the 15th of December, it was just a really hot day, and the mums put all their young, area of Yarra Bend that's just all clay, and unfortunately a lot of the we lost about 500 pups from that season. That was before, a week before that really 46 degree, the fires. Terrible. I got a video from the sale, it was 40 degrees, just for an example of how so basically when they're getting really hot, that's what they do, they're sort of fanning. As they get more delirious, they come down the trees and they start to pump. And this is about 40 degrees, and we'll just like, please stay at that temperature, please get very high, because they were just holding on to together. This is just a nice video, sort of after that hot day, them all coming in for dipping at that night. That was pretty cool. This was in the sale when they were there in 2021. They're all coming in as the temperature dropped. I think 35. Yeah, under 35, sorry. And then they're all dipping, annoying the spoonbills a little bit. All right, orphans. So we get the majority of what we do is obviously a lot of orphans that come in, although I prefer the adults. They're a lot more inquisitive and intelligent and very endearing, so they become very trusting very quickly, but the baby's obviously adorable. So we, in that 2019, we had heaps of pups that came in. That's my husband Nathan trying to wrangle them all, and then we had to, unfortunately, we sort of got to the point where we had over 200 pups, and it's a matter of popping them in with drippers and then having to, it's not possible for us to hand feed them all. So they pick it up pretty quickly. It's just that we'd love to be able to do them one-on-one, and that's what we've all been trained to do, so you feel a bit sad because that's how their mums would be, but it's either death or this way of rearing them. Just some cute videos. So we obviously have to feed them upside down, and that's we can just give them dairy or goats, which is one of the only sort of wildlife we can do that with. There is specialised milk formulas you can use, but goat seems to be very soothing on unwell baby bellies, which and they thrive on that. And this is just at my place. They need to have about 15 minutes of sun, 15 to 30 minutes of sun per day to really get that vitamin D. So they love to be in the sun, as you see at Yarra Bend. We have a creche, which you may have seen at Yarra Bend. So I do a lot of the creche at my place with, sort of what it means is all the pups that have been ham raised, they come to bat school or creche to learn to be bats again. So they have that one-on-one with the carers, or they've had a lot of human interaction, and then it's a matter of popping them in with all the others, and they immediately are just like, yay, I'm a bat. And so they all love to be together. So when we get this many animals, a lot of other species you can just chuck them in together, but with these species it's quite easy. So this is the flight aviary we have in Yarra Bend for when we do the soft release. So when the pups have been with me at creche for 1 to 2 months, we transfer them to here, and then they're soft release for about 8 weeks, which means they're given substitute food whilst integrating with the wild population. So Friends of Bats and Bush Care, we work with very closely, that organise volunteers to feed them every day. I'll go in and check their health and that, but most of the time they're just left to be, and then we open a hatch and they can come and go as they please. This latest year we had a really tight schedule because we had 417 pups, which is about 400 more than normal. So it was a huge amount, and we had to do it in such staggered groups of like 70 because we didn't want to cram too many in there, but we had to do them they had to get moving. But anyone that came back that was struggling, we just put them back in the cage until that group was ready, and then they got released. But we had to really move them along so that we weren't having them in care longer than necessary. We work alongside, obviously with vets, mainly zoos, Victoria, so Hillsville Sanctuary, Werribee and Melbourne Zoo. Hillsville do the majority of like the orthopaedic, so this little one, his mum was electrocuted, and the power company, the linesman didn't realise that it had young, and they used poles to whack them off, which we try and tell them please don't. And the weight of the mum broke its forearm, but the only good thing was it was a clean break versus a terrible one that is fixable. Obviously that's really ugly, but it was the only way we can really let's do those external fixations, because they want to keep moving and that. So yeah, Hillsville, Melbourne Zoo, most vets unfortunately don't see bats because of the ABLV risk, Australian Bat Leucovirus risk, which is really hard for us when we have emergency euthanasias, which is, you know, even though the zoos are in 3 locations, it's normally an hour from any person that's got this bat. So we try and get we try to get other vets to get on board where possible, even if it's just for the euthanasias, which is sad, but when it's needed. So what we do at Fly Night, obviously we do a lot of the coordinating with rescues, education, advocacy, rescue, rehabilitation and release. So I have 8 foster carers, so I mentor them, and a lot of Flying Fox groups now I have mentored previously because it's gotten a lot busier in Victoria. And then it's sort of one of those unique species. Obviously you've got to have a vaccination, but you've got to sort of know how to wrangle them, because they're a bit like an octopus when you're trying to hold them, and bits and pieces everywhere. So my flight ovary is the one in the left-hand corner. One of my foster carers has this middle one, and the top left-hand corner, it's 5 by 10 metres. Majority of them go into a humidity coop first, so it's like a ICU hot box, whatever you want to call it, when they first come in, and then they're transferred to the indoor cages, which may seem like it's very mean to keep them in small quarters, but it is because you can't really put them in the bigger cages because they'll just hurt themselves again, and then you have mid cages, they're just going to try and fly around and smash themselves. So you've got to have them in sort of that small, and it's only temporary. So Flying Fox, we actually had a Flying Fox, who was the oldest. He was banded, sort of metal banded in 2000 and, I think it was 2004. Anyway, he was 22 years old. So they can have a long life expectancy, that word. So they've normally, they say 15 years in the wild. So to have a 22-year-old that was banded in the Royal Botanical Gardens when they were trying to do the dispersal there. and we don't know how old he was when he was banded. We only know he was an adult, so he could have been older than 22, we don't know. But it just shows they can survive for quite a long time in the wild. So that's why, even though, you know, you'll get people going, you know, that's cool keeping them in care for 3 months, you're like, that's really small for when they can have a really long life. Obviously we go through a lot of fruit, so each flying fox, an adult, will eat 500 grams of fruit, and when we say eat, they're just squeezing the fruit out, and squeezing the juice out, and then doing a spat. So you might have seen that around the plants around Moreton Bay figs. You'll see like it's the shape of their palate. So a lot of people think that's poo, but it's actually them just squeezing out all the goodness and then spitting out, and that creates those seeds. So
Don't forget the fire.
no, that's it. They don't. I think that just keeps their weight down a bit so they can sustain those flights. But yeah, like with the apples, pears they love, grapes they love, watermelon they love. Apples the best for nutrients, or the best substitute. And then we put the Wombaroo, which is a high protein supplement, we mix over that fruit. So I'll chop up the fruit like I was doing 35 kilos a night. Insane. So it would be like all that chopped, and you'd be like, please don't drop it all on the floor, because some of them would be just like, I don't like that, I don't like that. But we also do, obviously, it'll be like 25 kilos of fruit, and then watermelon slices, as well as apple juice that's not the constitute, like the real apple juice. This is them in my aviary this year, some of them. So we hang the fruit up with the watermelon pieces, as well as the fruit in the buckets. You'll see things flying, that's often the spats. Yeah, and they'll just, their thumbs they use for everything. So, close up. This little one, like you can see, they literally use their thumbs as fingers, so they pull that pupa and they teach themselves that pretty quickly. That's what they would be doing if it was a nectar on gum or something like that. End goal is release, obviously, so once they're rehabilitated to a point that, you know, they're able to fly, we're able to get them back out there. So I've got a little video of Lawrence. This one was a bit hesitant, but and you'll see like we were on a hill, but they kind of really go down, so we've got to kind of release them from a height, because they go down and then they go up. This one was in Bellbird before they moved. I was releasing by myself. So on my phone. So we try to release them around now, just so they can get settled. They have like a deep sleep at around 3:30. They go into like this, it's not really a deep sleep, they just have a rest before they start getting really ready for fly out, depending on time of the year. And they will, this is more getting them settled for when then they will do a big fly out later in the night. Some of our wings and collabs, so ABC did an interview when we were getting so many new colonies popping up all over Victoria in the last 12 months. We had them in Leerdale. I think this one might have been triggered by Ballarat, I think, and Ballarat Botanical Gardens. The City Power and Power Corps, when they did the story, we were really grateful for them to be even considering insulating lines to help with that, so we wanted to make a story of that, and they got Channel 9 involved. Department of Environment, volunteer week, that was Fig, who, the success with him is that we've never had an import of a grey-headed flying fox flown in. Most of the time departments don't like to import and export flying foxes. It's a biosecurity hazard, so we were able to successfully get him back to Melbourne, which you would think would be pretty standard, but it's not. We had to go through a lot of department rigmarole, permits and that, and we got him flown over back from Tasmania with, I think it was Virgin flew back. So he's in care with me at the moment, but he was down southeast Tasmania, which is very unusual. We don't really know how he got there. There's lots of theories, but he's not got any friends, so it wouldn't have been nice for him to stay there. The only other option would be euthanasia, which would be a bit overkill. So, bad term there, overkill. But yeah, also Australia Geographic, it's out at the moment until the end of this month, I think. Annette did a story about, unfortunately, all the deaths we had in November, December, when we had starvation issues. So a lot of the mums were leaving their young because they can sustain themselves as well as the baby. So we were rescuing a lot of babies that were kind of low or alone. We'd have to monitor them every day, and then we'd have big giant poles going in quietly to get these babies down. So she did a story which got on the front page of Australian Geographic, which was great. And a few other things that happened, so that was good. Then, some of the other places we work with, so Friends of Bats, Zoos, Health Wildlife, Animals Australia helped us out with some grants with the magnitude of fruit we needed. Like Bats of Melbourne, Moon Shadow, who's Lynn in Sale, she was my foster carer, and now she's got her own established shelter. So it looks after the Gippsland region of flying foxes, especially since they're moving about down Sale and Sale. So we've got obviously a lot more people we work with, but they're ones we work with closely. Just some cute videos. So far left is how they go to the toilet, if you didn't know. So they invert to go to the toilet, and then they do like a little shake once they're finished. Let's see if he plays the right one. So it's really cute to watch. A lot of people think Queenslanders particularly think that they poo and wee all over themselves, so they're grotty and gross, but they literally invert and go to the toilet, and then they even do a little shake, so it's all off. This is what they naturally eat if they were in cages. These are all orphan youngs from this year, and around we get bringing some blossom, which I don't know how much nectar is left in it, but they just immediately drawn to it. They just love it, and the fruit is there, that's what they go for. They always go for the blossom. I think that particular plant's probably a Western Australian, but it's the same, it's that nectar they love. This is Lawrence. They kept stealing his hat. So it's a hazard in the soft release cage if you're wearing anything, glass and cats, we just remove it. We're supposed to not be interacting with them, but he lost his hat a lot. And I'm just coming to the end, so I'm going to rush through that a bit quick. Just some cute photos and our website, Fly by Night, and then for the wildlife friendly fencing, which is on the netting, and barbed wire for ideas around that. and just some cute photos. There's a mum and bub in the left corner. A very beautiful grey-headed flying fox specimen in the middle. Another little pup. Any questions?
Do they have to fly out every night for food?
Most of the time they will, but there will be ones that won't go as far. Obviously when mums have babies, they leave them in the colony. Mums will have them on them for about 4 weeks, and after that 4 weeks they leave them in a creche in the actual colony. So mums might not go as far, and they're the ones that unfortunately normally caught in the nets because they're around the perimeter of the colony. But yeah, no, not always. You do see a lot of the males, especially when they're in breeding, they tend to protect their branch, so they'll, yeah.
I live in North Cape where I get the edge of the colony flying autograph flights.
Yep.
Do they leave at a certain time of light dark or a certain time on the clock?
Yep. So dusk is normally the time. So they'll start at right on dusk. Someone will start making them all go crazy, and then they all start flying. And then as soon as it really gets to that, just as the sun goes down, they all. So often when you, I think it depends on the time, but normally about 5:30, not at this time of year. Anyway, you're driving down Chandler, you'll see them all following the freeway, and you just get the glimpse of them before it's completely dark. Yeah, but it's normally straight up. I tell people if they want to see the fly out to go just before dusk so they can really see it happening. Yeah.
So how do they find the food source? You know,
That is a good question. We don't know. I think it's around communication that they obviously have. They obviously know something around the gums because they often will find, I think it was last year, there was a big yellow box flowering that happened in some random location, and they all sort of ventured there. But often they have sort of known locations. So, yeah, I think you were saying about your friend that comes for your gum. They do remember food sources, but when they move in big numbers, that's normally around, I'd say they have scouts that would go out and then they would find a situation, yeah. But often you can relate it to a flowering of something happening for where they are. Yeah.
Can you... The flight, do they use always, probably according to the food, but always the same corridor?
No.
And you don't think they use a special corridor for source of food and with marking? Eh?
Well, I thought they would always go certain directions, but when I go to film them going down Chandler, they always end up going north, all the other directions. So they do have corridors, but it depends on where it's flowering. So at the moment, we're getting a lot of rescue calls around that, Melbourne, North Melbourne, northern suburbs, and obviously there's some sort of food source there. And sometimes we have them in, Lerderberg Forest there. There's often a lot going out in Bacchus Marsh area from Yarra Bend. So, and like where I am, I see them every couple of nights. I'm in the Linda, but they come out to Belgrave from Yarra Bend. So it just really depends where things are flowering.
So if we were going to plant trees that obviously nectar-bearing trees that fit in with our palette, that they prefer, which ones would you suggest for somewhere like the inner city Melbourne?
I normally always try to say go with the indigenous of what's in the area, irrelevant to it, because with flying foxes there'll be something that they'll eat. So, but you could go something fast growing like lily pilly or not Moreton Bay fig, not that one. Lots of there's bottle brush. There's a lot of other sort of tropical plants but I don't think they're really suitable for here. So it's more those eucalypts. It would just be ones that are fast growing, obviously, because they don't flower pretty quickly. Yeah.
Can you make donations to help you out through your website?
Yes. We always grateful for donations. So majority of it goes towards the fruit. We do get help from Woolworths. They give us like you've got to be lucky to get the leftover, because there's lots of businesses now that do for human as well, so we kind of try and get a bit of scraps there, but they do, it has to be human grade, so it makes it difficult if it's quite expensive, and we've noticed that with everything. So that's what we really struggled with this year, is the fruit. You know, the high protein powder can be expensive, but when you need, you just got to think 417 pups times 500, yeah, it's grams. It's a lot of fruit. So I was bringing in, I think one of the photos I had there, I was getting a pallet full of apples from orchards that were understanding of the situation, bringing them into Yarra Bend to feed pups.
And if their membrane gets ripped, does it grow back? Or?
No, so it's like we only have a certain amount of skin, so for membrane it will fill in a hole. So if it's a juvenile, obviously they're still growing, but with an adult, if they get a hole, it'll pull in, but it's pulling it from another part of the body. If it's a tear, that's not a great situation because it won't reconnect. But holes heal really well, but it depends whether, because they've got nose membrane as well, yeah. Yes. Yes.
Oh, are you able to source like rejected fruit, you know, where Coles and Woolworths will only take standard looking?
Yeah, yes, yeah.
Maybe I missed out on.
No, that's okay. Yeah, often we try to, but there's a lot of places now that do it, like Second Bite and that do it for the humans. So we sort of get the thirds and fourths, which are often not a good condition. So the problem with flying foxes is that it has to be human, almost human grade. So we can get like from the orchards. Unfortunately, where I was getting those orchards, they wouldn't make any money from apples that were big or little. So we were getting those ones, which we were happy with. There's so much food wastage, it's crazy. Even Woolworths, I can't use the vegetables, it's just the fruit. But they have just trays and trays of vegetables just getting thrown out because it's already passed. But yeah, fruit's obviously a harder thing because it does spoil quickly. So I normally try and get sort of 80% apples because that lasts a lot longer. Then your pears, your watermelon and your grapes. Yeah.
The other thing is, how do they interact with birds?
That's a good question. I think generally they shouldn't really be, yeah, I think they don't normally cross over, but in the colony there's 20 frogmouths, and I don't know how they sleep with the noise of the flying foxes, but they're in the hallways there. The lorikeets, and if you've got the noise of the flying foxes at night, you often have the noise of the lorikeets during the day. So often they can squabble, but generally they're not really interacting as such. Their predator, or grey-headed flying fox's predator other than the humans, is your powerful owl. So most of the time, the only thing that will kill a flying fox is a powerful owl or some sort of cat. Or a cat, yeah. It's normally like they're well, what's a good way of saying natural? Their natural predator is your raptors. So in Sydney they have like the seabird, the sea eagles that would go for the pups.
I was sort of thinking, actually, how would do they disturb the birds rather than, do they disturb them?
Yeah, they don't normally. I think it's the other way around. The lorikeets, when they're in with the flying foxes, they just scream in their faces. So it's like the lorikeets are like, oh. So when we're feeding at the soft release, we often have like 40 lorikeets that come in, and you're just like, go away. But yeah, there's not really, normally once the flying foxes are out and active, the birds are in bed. But I think most of the time interactions are with possums and the flying foxes in the eucalypts and things, yeah. And they just sort of sit there eating, and they're like, stay in distance, but there's no sort of fighting or anything as such.
Did I understand that they from your map that they're sort of into South Australia, but they haven't found the delight in Western Australia?
No, I don't know. They're in the little red flying foxes, which we get a couple every now and again in Victoria, but it's majority greys. The little reds are in Broome, but they don't seem to go south more. We don't know. I don't even think they travel across there for pollination, which they have so many of those eucalypts. So obviously something. Yeah, it's with Victoria and Adelaide. We don't actually want them down here, and long term with the heat, especially during the summer, it's just as you know, Adelaide just can get to like 38 real quick, and that just wipe out a colony. So yeah, it's not great. Like I love them here, but you're sort of like, we don't want them in large numbers. So one of the reports was that there was 70% of this species in Victoria this year, which is really scary. If we had a hot day, we could wipe out a large proportion of that. So there's about 400, well, they're guessing, but it's around 400,000 left of the species. So if you imagine that a lot of them are down here and they're coming into trouble, and we have a hot day, it would be bad.
Western Australia would be heaven.
Yeah. It'd be good as long as they're not getting stuck in those high temperatures. So I'd say I don't know much about. I think there's a fair gap of nothing. There's a desert in between Manellabore and that. So I'm picking they can't get any food. They don't get enough food to sustain them to that point. Yeah.
Is there anything that can be done when it's so hot? I mean, do the sprinklers work? Or
Yeah, look,
what do they need?
it's the temperatures are obviously rising. It's really difficult. Obviously, vegetation is a big thing. We know, like, you know, you have plants versus just your normal grass, and it drops that temperature. So we are trying to re-veg in Yarra Bend, but it's not something that happens quickly. So that's why I brought in the sprinklers. A lot of ecologists will say it's re-veg. But if we don't have that, if we've got them destroying the habitat north, how are we going to keep? So really, in 2019 when it was 48 degrees, there was just nothing you could do, and I was just lucky that some of them. As an example, the sprinklers definitely worked. We had sprinklers and people holding like fire hydrant hoses, literally just making rain above them. In other states, it can be difficult because of humidity, so you've got to be careful you're not making it hotter. But they lost, I think it was 2018, it was 200,000 flying foxes died, and that's not just greys, that's blacks and little reds, because it was so hot in Queensland, which is weird. So like the hot like we have. So dry heat isn't good for them. So sprinklers work to a point, but then when you get to that really hot temperatures, there's not a lot you can do. Even when you can get to them to reach them, they're already delirious, and you've got like very short period of time when you've got 20. So we lost 10,000. There's just no way that you can have enough manpower to hydrate them all, and yeah.
So when you were moving, or when they moved the colony from the Botanic Gardens,
Yes.
and it seemed to all work. It always seemed to me at the time that how do you make that sort of change work? But it does seem to have worked.
It's the only successful one they've had. All over Australia, you've got Charters Towers is the worst, but lots of places that are trying to push them out. Normally botanical gardens, and what it is, I think the reason it was successful was it wasn't actually technically successful because they wanted them in another part of another area, and when they landed in Yarra Bend, they were like, oh, okay, you can stay there, because it was a separate place. I'm not sure where. I think it was a little bit further along. They were actually trying to get them to, but it was 3 months of basically driving them insane. So it wasn't good for them, and we don't know how much stress it caused the species, but it was like banging and crashing, and so they Colac recently was trying to disperse, and it's quite a cruel process because they're coming in after flying all night, and you basically so imagine you're just trying to get to sleep, and then you've got people banging and making noise and putting smoke in your face to try and move you, and they're going to know what the hell. So it's quite. Melbourne has been really the only success with that, but I think if any other places, there's no actual place for them to go. They just kind of like go anywhere but here, and they end up in people's backyards, and yeah, it's not. And that's where things like diseases can shed because they're getting into real stress levels, and then they have miscarriages, and yeah, lots of things go on. But at the time, it was that they were wanting to cull them, so you had to kind of come to a Lawrence, who you saw a couple of times in the video. He was very much involved with that, and yeah, he was able to stop them from being culled. But then I don't actually know if that would have happened because it was probably would have 2004. But yeah, they were lots of noise, lots of banging and crashing. I think pots and pans, and yeah, yeah.
Right. Any other questions?
I was going to say what a fantabulous presentation it was. Nice and big, easily readable.
Oh, good.
Lots of pictures, fabulous.
I'm probably going a bit fast, but yeah,
Best we've
thank
ever
you.
had.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
We've just got an announcement which you might like to thank Tamsyn first.
Okay, sure. Well, Tamsyn, thank you
No
very
worries.
much for coming along today and
No
sharing your knowledge with us. Are we able to get a copy of your presentation?
Absolutely.
I'd love to put that on the
Yep.
website.
Yep.
So
That
to
should be
speak.
fruit, mate.
Yeah.
What's that?
More than that.
I think it's crushed fruit for me.
So we wanted to add that, and
Thank you very much.
again,
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'm sure Chris can put an aviary in the back here for the bats.
Yes.
I'd
Yes.
love to.
That would be good. Yeah.
Bit scared of being as dedicated a volunteer as you are.
Yeah, parks dread us, unfortunately. I don't know if you work in parks, but yeah, not these crazy bat people again, but yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so look, yes, thank you very much
No worries,
for your
thank you.
presentation. It was lovely, and I think, yeah, well worthwhile. So good luck, and keep at it,
Yes.
and I hope we can assist you whichever way we can.
Yes,
So,
I appreciate
thank you.
everything.